Yeah, g'day, kia ora, Pastor Carl Brommer down here in the deep south, and this video is addressing some good news coming out of the US regarding autism, but also concerning and disturbing statistics regarding the rate of autism, not just in the USA, but right here in New Zealand, and some evidence emerging in regards to causation. Now, this has been a very sensitive issue because it involves big pharma and drug companies that have been very defensive, obviously, in protecting their industries, the funding from that. So in the past, this conversation regarding things that have shown evidence to contribute to autism have been shunned as unpolitical or politically incorrect. And often people who have been asking questions and doing research and uncovering disturbing associations with autism have been slandered, defamed, etc., because of the implications of those findings. Thank the Lord, thank God that the USA has an administration right now that is not driven by the big mighty dollar and protecting big corporations. President Donald Trump with Secretary of Health, Robert Kennedy Jr., RFK, have been researching thoroughly with their medical staff into the astounding rates of growing autism in the US and the causation. They've broken down silos, and Trump's just basically said, forget about the corporations, etc. We want answers to this, why we have such alarming states of autism. Now, let me just go through some of the figures here to give you an understanding of how alarming this situation is, both in the US and in New Zealand, before I talk a little bit about what they have in terms of evidence with doctors saying undeniable association with the growing amount and rates of autism in the United States and America. And of course, it'll translate here and in any country that utilizes or uses the products that are causing, seems like evidently, autism in the United States. Now, here in New Zealand and anywhere in the world where there's Trump derangement syndrome, TDS, anything Trump says his administration does, they throw out the window. But if you throw this out the window because of Trump derangement syndrome, you do it to your own peril and to your own kids and to your grandkids or whatever, or whoever you might have responsibility for. Because this is not just opinionated information coming out of the administration. This is information coming out of robust, in-depth, aggressive research, breaking down silos and lifting the lid without regard to corporatization and fiscal benefit, out of genuine concern for this crippling, debilitating illness, disease, condition, what have you, regarding autism. So first of all, the United States, quote unquote, a few decades ago, quote unquote, the rate of incidence of autism was 1 in 20,000. About 18 years ago, that dropped to 1 in 10,000. Now in the United States, the rate of autism is 1 in 31. So in just a few decades, going from 1 in 20,000 to 1 in 31. And in California, amongst boys, it's reported as frequent as 1 in 12. Something's going on disturbing. This is what has triggered this aggressive research and demand to find answers in the United States. In New Zealand, on good authority, from people who have been involved in the research and people personally affected by autism. These are the New Zealand statistics. 1996, autism presented as 1 in 10,000. 2001 reports came out of the autism rate is 1 in 5,000. 2008 in New Zealand, 1 in every 116 children. Now it's reported at 1 in 26. Wow, that's incredible. And you might take into account perhaps some broader diagnosis of autism on different levels of the spectrum, but going from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 26 in basically 24 years. I beg your pardon, not 24 years, 29 years. In 29 years, that's diabolical. Now, what's been revealed in the United States through their aggressive research, their medical expertise, as they've looked at the causations or associations of autism. Now, one doesn't surprise me and one does surprise me. One I've been aware of for some time. Now, if you don't know my background, I worked as a registered nurse, a New Zealand registered nurse, and I worked for Child, Adolescent and Family Mental Health Service in the North Island early on in my career. And I remember early on, one of my first cases was a dear wee boy that I was on my case list, who was about probably 6 or 7 years old, and he was autistic. And it was commonly known and reported amongst our colleagues and understood that this was a vaccine injury. Okay, this is a fact. I'm not making this up. This is a fact. This is from my past professional career. No names mentioned. I'm not mentioning where I worked. But it was hush, kept under the table that this young, beautiful boy, I think he's around 6 or 7 years old, if I can remember, perfectly functioning, absolutely healthy, and then had irreversible autism at around 6 or 7 years old. Absolutely tragic. Now, what's emerging in the States through the research done by the Trump administration and Robert Kennedy, I think, as I said, the Secretary of Health, I believe, is that two strong associations. One, it doesn't surprise me because there's been a lot of research about this for decades. It's been shunned, defamed, slandered, etc., for obvious reasons in my view, but that's vaccinations. And for a long time, people have been targeting the issue of the use of aluminium in vaccination, and from the US, they are also citing mercury, and an issue with pumping babies full of vaccinations, many vaccinations in a very short amount of time. So that's come out as evidence of one of the associated issues with autism. Okay, this is coming out of the woodwork, thankfully, thank God, pushing aside all the political correctness and all the attempts to protect big pharma corporations. Now, the one that surprised me, and one I think that people really need to understand and appreciate, that is coming out of strong data supporting association with autism, is the use of a particular drug ingredient, active ingredient, acetaminophen. Now, what is that, you might ask? Well, that's the main active ingredient in Panadol, in Paymol, in otherwise called paracetamol. In the United States, it's often called Tylenol. Okay, so what the strong evidence has shown in the US is alarming and disturbing, that there's an association with autism with the use of Panadol during pregnancy, and the use of Paymol, that's the baby form of Panadol, early in infancy, or in babies in infancy. Now, this is mind-blowing, monumental evidence emerging. The use of Panadol and Paymol, because of the active ingredient acetaminophen, otherwise known as paracetamol, is showing very strong, as one doctor said, undeniable association with the growing frequency of autism. Okay, vaccines, pumping kids full of vaccines at a very young age. They contain aluminium. That was a big one. That was targeted and highlighted as a possible associated cause of autism, mercury, and this one to do with Panadol, paracetamol, has blown my mind. But very strong evidence. In fact, that was being highlighted as one of the main things that Robert Kennedy and President Trump were talking about, and other doctors at this big announcement they made, I think it was just yesterday or today, in the United States, regarding this robust and rugged, aggressive research into why in the United States autism's gone from 1 in 20,000 down to as low as 1 in 12 amongst boys in California. And the same trend here in New Zealand, 1 in 10,000 from 1996, now down to about 1 in 26. So, do with the information what you want. I'm going to leave the link to the announcement from the Trump administration, United States administration. You can watch it for yourself. Now, you can write it off and throw it off with Trump derangement syndrome. That would be absolutely tragic if he did that, because some people like that. Just because Donald Trump's involved, people will be writing it off. I understand New Zealand media is already scoffing at this. You know, one thing about the US is they do their research, and I have found personally that like places like Johns Hopkins and other places like that, they're much more thorough. They're not ninnies, they're not nincompoops who are doing this. These are highly qualified, top of the chain, top of the hill experts, now with unfettered mandate to look for questions, answers, and ask the questions. These are the people coming up with this data and information. Okay, so ignore it at your peril. I know it's hard, because when you're a parent, you want the best for your kids, and you just trust the doctor. Doctor knows best. Big Pharma knows best. Okay, when our kids were young, we used Panadol, we used Paymol, okay, for our kids. And we were quite selective, I'll give you that. We were selective with our vaccinations. We would not use a vaccine that has any human diploid cells in it. That's a vaccine that's been that has a component that is produced from the recreating of cells from aborted fetuses. It's called a human diploid cell. They don't tell you this. So because we are anti-abortion, pro-life, we have never vaccinated our children for anything with human diploid cells. And in fact, we were very choosy about the vaccines that they didn't need. So they didn't get our kids did not get everything, okay, because of that reason. So it's really hard, I know, because as a parent, you want to do the right thing. But what if doing what you think is the right thing is going to actually harm your kid permanently with autism or some terrible reaction, okay? You know, so just take a breath, think about it. Don't be quick to judge what I'm saying. Use some critical thinking. Watch the presentation from the Trump administration and the discussion with the doctors there regarding these issues. And think about it, because you thinking you're doing the right thing, in all good conscience and sincerity, might end up with you actually doing the absolute opposite wrong thing for your kids. Okay, so it is hard. Yeah, we wrestled with it as kids, with our kids, as parents. And so it's worth it, though. It's worth wrestling with it. It's worth doing your own research, avoiding all the political correctness, and listening to sources of expertise who don't have a fiscal skin in the game. They're not in there to protect their own silos. And so watch out for reports done by pharmaceutical companies, etc., etc. Okay, it's like a tobacco company telling you how healthy cigarettes are, okay? That's the same as pharmaceutical companies giving you their own reports, investigating their own products, okay? They're always going to tell you it's good. So be circumspect, okay? Your child's health could depend on this. So I'll leave the link in this video. And look, I want to encourage you to share this everywhere, not for clicks, not for following for my Facebook page or YouTube channel, but for the sake of the kids, for children and for parents, because there's nothing more tragic than having a dear precious child develop some kind of disease or condition or syndrome when it could have been avoided, eh? So Share, share, share if you care. Bye for now. Every time I go to close the video, the slow connection thing comes up and stops me pressing the end video buttons. Here it is. Okay, now. See you. Bye.